That's no moon. It's a space station.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. So we're just going to jump right to the chase today. We're very excited to have David Icke with us today, a man who needs no introduction. He's been at this for decades now, and this is a big moment for us. We're very happy to have you here with us, David. And you've been exposing these agendas for 30 years now, and a lot of what you've talked about is coming to fruition. The stuff that you got ridiculed about in the early days is happening. And there's a lot of truthers out there that are just now discovering this stuff and they think it's all new. But you've been covering this stuff. You were way ahead of the game in a lot of ways. So we're excited to just dive in and uncover this anti-human agenda and this order out of chaos and all this stuff and the reptilian side of things, and also like the reptilians in the astral realm. There's a lot of stuff I'd like to cover, but you just told us about some breaking news that just happened. Maybe we could start with that, but welcome to the show. We're very happy to have you here.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, it's kind of quite surreal to see breaking news and bombshell revelations that were in my books like 20 years ago or more. But I'm glad that it's coming out, obviously, to more people. And what I've said over the years, when I've said, look, I predicted this, it was in my books. And, I said this would happen. I've not been saying that over the years, and I don't say it now for, hey, look at me, am I good? I was there. It's this simple equation. If I could predict it, it must be a plan.
Right.
If I'm not been sitting in a darkened room pulling this out of the ether. Well, a bit here and there, but I mean, it's supported by tangible names, dates, places, people, evidence, and therefore it must have been planned, because this. What's the chances of predicting A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and it coming right by pure random accident?
Right.
It's a plan, and therefore, what is the plan, and where's it meant to go? And what I'm doing now in a book that's just come out called The Reveal is going deeper in the rabbit hole than I've ever been before, to really see where this plan is going and where it's planned to go and where it comes from. That's the point. One of my problems with what I think is the hijacked alternative media, the mainstream of it, where people have come out of the mainstream and suddenly taken it over, and they're all the superstars of this arena. My problem is that they are focusing purely on right-wing politics, and of course religion thrown in as well, increasingly. And that is a level of politics is a level. It's a way the conspiracy plays out. It's not the source of it.
Right.
And it's the puppet show level. The real stuff's using that, right?
It's the source of it that I've been looking for all these years, and I'm getting closer to it. But the one thing which can't be questioned, is whatever you think there's always more to know, and that's what the basis I work on, and that keeps pushing you on and on and on, because you're always asking, okay, well, I think I got this, but what don't I know? And it's the what don't I know that pushes you deeper and deeper in the rabbit hole.
Right. So without sugarcoating anything, what do you think, as far as who is actually running the show? And, we can talk about off-world entities, non-human interference, stuff like that as well, because I think it all stems from something like that.
Yeah, well, it's a massive story. And this is, when I started out in 1990 on this, my 35th year now, there was no alternative media. It didn't exist. And just a few disparate individuals, that's all it was, putting this stuff out in as best they could. And it was, in those days, it was really this world stuff, if you like. It was all the secret societies and how they interlock, and all the control of politics, not by prime ministers and presidents, but by something much deeper in the shadows. And it was all that going on. And then gradually, things started to emerge in terms of an alternative media. And I was delighted, because it's like, whoa, we might have a chance here, because more and more people are seeing this. And the frustration is that awakening to the source of, well, not necessarily the source, the real source of this, but to a greater source of this, was building a building to the point where people started to see we live in one-party states, and that left-right politics is, as you say, the puppet show. And then we had COVID, and it was just an absolutely wonderful opportunity, because people had this conspiracy put in their face. And as I said at the time, these people have entered the room where we could see them, or at least one level of them has. The level like your Schwabs and your Gateses and such like. And I remember, going on marches through London in protest at the restrictions, the COVID restrictions. And it started off, there were very, very few, and the police were picking them off because there weren't many. But in the end, it was hundreds of thousands of people walking through the streets of London. The police were just standing on the side. There, nothing they could do. And what I remember about it, what was so different about it, is that there was this incredible unity between people of different religions, different faiths, different cultures, even different political belief systems. I'm sure, but there was a unity of purpose to focus upon that which affected all of us. And I thought, whoa, we got a chance here. And then this group of people that moved in from the mainstream media, overwhelmingly, not all of them, but many of them. And they basically caused the alternative media at the central core. I mean, outside of that, people like me and you and so many others doing fantastic stuff and have minds that will go and seek out what's actually happening. But at this central core, where they get the algorithmic support, they get the financial support, massive, actually, it seems quite breathtaking, some of the stuff that's come out in the last few weeks, and the promotion. It's caused a regression from even the one-party state to right-wing politics. And we used to have this thing years ago, which was always talked about when it came to elections, the Christian right. And basically, the alternative media has become the Christian right, if you look at the central core of it.
Yeah.
And the reason that I have, called this out is because if we stay there, if we stay in this myopia, what we've done is move from the belief that it's all random to actually, it is. And at the political level and financial level, it's manipulated, and the deep state and all that stuff. But actually, that's just one level of it. You've got to really open your mind to get further and further and further and further in the rabbit hole, which is where not only can we get a fix on the scale of what's going on, that's where we get a fix on what we can do about it from a much more deep level of consciousness and what people call spirituality. So that's what I've been doing this past 35 years. Once I've thought, okay, I've got this, I think I've got this. Obviously, there's more to know about everything. But what don't I know? And that's taken me on an extraordinary journey because I've just gone more and more in terms of an expanded view of this with each step. And I saw a quote recently which talked about you don't awaken. Well, you don't. None of us is awake. You can't be at the situation we're in. We're awakening, and some are awakening more than others. But this quote was talking about the fact that you go through a series of awakenings. Mm-hmm. And so the first one is presidents and prime ministers don't run the world. So who does? And if you kind of stop there, then you're missing everything else. And so it's a series of awakenings. And the awakening is really a deprogramming. It's deprogramming from the perceptual beliefs that are we're bombarded with from cradle to grave. And it means to really expand into these panoramic levels of what's going on. You need to not have belief systems to the extent that they're no-go areas. So if you've got a religious belief or a political belief or a cultural belief, and it's unquestionable, you can't question that, then you're not going to go into those areas of research that could put your current belief system under threat or under challenge. And so you need an open mind where you're only interested in what's happening, what you think is happening, and making what is happening fit your belief system.
Right.
And so you with that, you go. And first of all, I realized in the early 1990s that this, what I call now global cult, was real, this global network of secret societies. And then I started to see that, hold on a minute, when did this start? And you go back into ancient history, and you see how this global cult has emerged until it was global. And you realize that there has to be a coordinating force that's coordinated this, because there's people being born, they play their part in advancing this cult agenda in the secret societies, and then they die, and then others come in, the next generation do it. So there has to be a coordinating force that spans all these generations and these literally thousands of years. And that's when I started coming across, in about the mid-1990s, the fact that there were non-human entities operating outside of human sight that were actually manipulating human society for their own ends, and that this global cult was basically representing within the human world their interests and their agenda. Then I started to look at the nature of reality. What is it? And you can't understand the conspiracy without grasping the nature of reality and its illusory physical state. And from about just after the turn of the millennium, I started to see, I got this overwhelming feeling that this reality is actually a simulation. It's a digital frequency simulation. It operates like a Wi-Fi field. It's a Wi-Fi field of information which we are decoding into the world that we think we're experiencing, which is external. And the longer it went on, I started to realize that the human body, which I've been calling since the 1990s a biological computer, was actually the equivalent of a virtual reality headset, in that it was decoding this simulation field like a computer decodes Wi-Fi. And what's been really helpful, to say the least, although it's very dangerous in terms of what the ultimate goal is that this technological society that's now emerging is a technological, in so many ways, a technological mirror of how we actually interact with reality and how we create reality. Because you've got a Wi-Fi field of information, that's the radiation field encoded with information. We call that the internet. And the computer decodes it. It decodes it into a very, very different form on the screen of the computer. And the other thing is that although I'm looking at this screen now from, apparently externally, the decoding of what I'm looking at is going on inside the computer. And this human body headset operates in the same way. So if you look at mainstream science, it talks about the fact that the five senses are how we lock into this simulation, how the body locks into it. They are picking up frequency information from the field. They're turning it into electrical information, communicating it to the brain, and the brain then decodes it into a reality. What I say is a holographic digital reality. And that reality, grant you, appears to be external to us, but actually it's all going on in here. And so if you liken this to, like I say, a headset, if you go on the internet and you watch these compilations of people where they put a headset on, and suddenly their sense of reality completely changes in seconds, minutes, and they're thrashing around, they're screaming, they're falling off their chairs. And that is only putting a headset on, which they can take off and go, pew, it's just a game. But if your headset that's decoding this simulation is your human body, then the only way you can stop that decoding, delivering a sense of reality to you, is at death. And that's why when the body ceases to function, or what we call death, people in their millions now have had these near-death experiences where they've suddenly found themselves in another reality. Their consciousness is in another reality. It's because the headset has ceased to decode this one. And if you look at, again, mainstream science, the band of frequency that we can actually see, it's ridiculous. According to mainstream science, the electromagnetic spectrum, which is basically human experience reality, is 0.005% of what exists in the universe in terms of energy in its different forms. And visible light, which is the only band of frequency that we can see, is a fraction of the 0.005%. And there's a reason for that. Because if you had a wider visual acuity, you would see or control it, because they're operating on frequencies and dimensions just outside of this one, but not close enough for us to actually see them. And so we're pinned in this really ridiculously narrow band of frequency for our visual acuity. And so it's clear to me then, as we went deeper in the rabbit hole, or I did because I work alone, that these entities were part of the structure that had created this simulation, which in so many ways mirrors the Matrix in the Matrix movies. And so if you look at those movies, they were outside the Matrix, and then this probe was put in the back of the neck, which is the reptilian brain, and they went into the Matrix, not with their physicality as it was portrayed in the movies, but through their mind, through their perceptions. And so as this went on, you ask another question. Well, what's the point? Why are they doing this? What do they get out of it? And then you go into the realms of the fact that these entities and the consciousness that works through them, is actually feeding off low vibrational human emotion and human thought.
Mm-hmm.
Every time, and this is again mainstream science, every time we feel emotion or we think, we're generating frequencies that relate to the nature of the emotion and the nature of the thought. So things like fear, I mean, the currency of control in the human world, things like fear, anxiety, depression, resentment, conflict, all these different things are low vibrational generators. And these entities are feeding off that energy. So they have absolutely no interest whatsoever in this world being one of joy and love and peace and happiness and people having enough to eat and having lives. They have no interest in that. Their interest is in using this matrix, this perceptual illusion, to conjure up events and experiences that constantly generate this low vibrational energy. And I just finish on this point with this. When you look at people and they're having an emotional experience, you can see from their body language they're having an emotional experience. Okay. But what you can't see with invisible light is the energy they're giving off as a result of their emotional and mental state. Because that energy is going into this other dimension. That's why we can't see it. And so these entities that operate in this other dimension are feeding off that. And, imagine the low vibrational energy produced by a world war. Imagine how much was produced by the fear of the COVID hoax and all these things that are going on, fear of World War III. All the time, they are manipulating us perceptually and emotionally to produce this illusion. Just a quick one. I started to realize in the 1990s that these people I was uncovering in terms of this global cult, these famous people, well, millionaires, then billionaires now, were taking part in satanic ritual. And it's like, what? Why? And then you look back and you look at those times all over the world when it was done openly, and they were doing rituals and ritual sacrifice of people, often children, young virgins to the gods and stuff, code for children. They were making these offerings to the gods, these sacrifice offerings. And you think, well, first of all, why? What do the gods get out of this? And then you think, well, hold on a minute. The ancients, because it was acceptable then, were openly sacrificing people as a gift to the gods. And then humanity got to a point of maturity where it wasn't having that anymore. And so it went underground. And you realize that these people today in this global cult, famous people, are doing satanic ritual sacrifice to the gods, and they're the same gods that the ancients were doing it to. And you look around the world, and people there, different cultures and parts of the world have different names for these quote gods, but they're all the same entities, not gods at all, idiots. And so you look at these pantheons. We talk about the Greek pantheon of gods, but as I talk about in the reveal, all over the world there are these pantheons of gods. There's the African pantheon, and everywhere you find the same theme using different names. And so, what I realized as I understood this process of feeding off low vibrational human emotion is that that's why they're sacrificing people. And that's what the offering to the gods is. And it also explains all these stories about adrenochrome coming out of Washington, D.C. and other places, but particularly there. They're doing basically the same rituals today, these rich and famous people, that they were doing in Babylon and places like that, because the nature of the ritual is designed to create a particular energetic environment and to elicit maximum terror in the victim. Mm-hmm. And as the person is being put through this, they're generating, understandably, this incredibly powerful low vibrational energy called terror. And these entities in this, what's called the astral dimension, that kind of interpenetrates this one, but outside of human sight, they are feeding off that terror. That's the offering to the gods. And what happens in the human level of the ritual, where they're conducting it in their stupid robes and what have you, is that this terror causes a chemical, adrenaline, to enter the blood, and that's why they drink the blood, because it's got this adrenaline in it. It's kind of almost like a drug to them. So again, the more that you go deeper in the rabbit hole, and you keep saying, "Well, okay, I think I know this, but what don't I know?" The more the dots connect, so you can see so many things that are explained that will never be explained while you're in the myopia of just focusing on this world alone.
Right.
So, because so many people talk about the problem of child trafficking and pedophilia and all this stuff, but you don't hear a lot of people talking about why that's a thing. And you just explained why. It's not just about the sexual aspect of it. It's about the energy harvesting aspect.
Well, that's an interesting point, because I've said in the books over the years many times that the satanic networks and the pedophile networks, at their core, are connected. Mm-hmm. And it's connected to the same thing. You see, one of the things I realized as my research unfolded through the 90s is that these entities, for whatever reason, want the energy of children before puberty. We see puberty as a chemical transformation, which on one level it is. But that chemical transformation is the result of a frequency, vibrational transformation that's going on in the energetic field of people at that time. And therefore, they want that energy before that happens. So we can now start to see this obsession with children. And so what's happening, again, it's all about frequency that allows us to see this. We're operating in the frequency band of what we call atomic matter. If people only realized just how tiny that is, it's unbelievable. Here's an example. Again, mainstream science. Of the visible universe, the universe we can see, 99%, some go as high as 99.99% of the energy in the visible universe is not matter. It's something called plasma, which is known as the fourth stage of matter. It's a much more ethereal stage of matter, so ethereal that we can't see it with our sight, with our visual frequency band.
Beyond the five senses.
It is beyond the five senses. So here's the thing. People say, okay, so where's this astral then? Well, this astral is a big band of frequency, and it goes into frequency levels that are way, way beyond this one. But it also comes in to basically interact with this one as well at its lower frequency levels, and that's where these entities are. So I'm looking around now. I can see a wall, I can see a window, I can see lights, and I can see a computer in the desk. But in between those forms, that matter, and as Einstein said, matter is just energy that's gone into a dense frequency state that makes it appear as if it's solid. And we interact with it as if it's solid. And I explain in the books how that works. But in between these forms of matter, to my visual reality, there's just empty space. It's not empty space, but it appears to be, because what's in that empty space is outside the visible frequency band of humans. But what it is plasma. And, like I say, they call plasma the fourth state of matter. Actually, it should be the first state of matter. It's overwhelmingly the basis of everything. And this plasma is actually the astral. When people have paranormal experiences and some ghost appears out of nowhere, they're appearing out of the astral. They're just entering a frequency state that you can see, but not most of the time in a physical sense. You see it in an ethereal sense because you're not on its frequency. If you were on its frequency, it would appear as solid as you and me. And so you have this astral, and these entities are operating in this lower level of the astral, outside of human sight, but close enough to interact. And these satanic rituals that they're doing are to interact with these entities. I've spoken to people because I've been doing this a long time, and I've traveled everywhere. I can't now because I'm banned from God knows how many countries, about nearly 30 now. But I've spoken to people who've taken part in these rituals, around the world. And they've, described to me how these entities, when they create the energetic environment, which is what these rituals are designed to do, with all the chants and all this other stuff that goes on, that in the really the advanced ones, the advanced ritual, these entities kind of appear in the ritual, and you see them. And often they're reptilian in nature, but not always. They're many different types, but they're all non-human. And so when it comes to pedophilia, horrible to talk about, but when the pedophile is abusing the child, shall we say, they are overlaid by these entities energetically. And the child's energy is being drawn off through the pedophile's energetic field into the field of these entities. And, I've talked to people, again, around the world. I've talked to people in cultures like the Zulu culture in South Africa, with a great friend of mine, unfortunately now passed, Credo Muchwa, the official historian of the Zulu nation and a high shaman. And he's describing how, for instance, in their village, they had men who were going around constantly looking after the children because they were being taken. And they were being taken because this child trafficking is unbelievable in scale. It's happening everywhere.
Right.
And what Credo described to me, not just from modern experience, but from the legends and accounts of going way back in the Zulu culture, and you'll find this everywhere, is that these entities are drawing off the energy of children, and they're doing it through these, quote, pedophiles, who are basically, to a very, very large extent, just literally possess people. Mm-hmm. Where these entities, which are in an energetic state, they lock in to the energetic field, the electromagnetic field of the body, what we call the auric field, and they make that connection, and they draw off the child's energy through that conduit. So this is going on all over the world. And, we've come a long way already from Trump or Harris, and right-wing politics and what have you. And this is why we really do need to expand our understanding of the scale of what's going on.
Right. And
absolutely.
So what are your thoughts on gods being here in human form and the towers and the frequency net surrounding the planet maintaining the illusion that keeps us from seeing their true identity, as far as like maybe even the royal family being a reptilian bloodline and stuff like that?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of hybrid bloodlines where they have an energetic field that contains the human information, and they have an energetic field that contains the reptilian or other non-human information, and they can shift between the two, especially in rituals. I've had it described to me by many people around the world how these people quote shapeshift during the rituals when they're among among friends, shall we say. Because they can move from one energetic field to another. But of course, in the public arena and when they're not among people who are part of this, they take their human form. But again, it's understanding, if people who are just stuck in five sense reality, and that's how they see everything is solid and what have you, then, and I've experienced this many times, they will dismiss any idea of, quote, shapeshifting, even though it goes way back into the ancient world and is described as such, because they say you can't go from a solid body to a solid body. And you can't. I'm the first one to say that.
But that's not what's happening.
That's not what's happening. It's an information shift. And what is happening, I described earlier how we are picking up with the five senses. We're picking up frequency information, the simulation field, actually, or we can beyond it if we're awake enough. And then the brain decodes that into a sense of reality. Well, that's exactly what's happening with shapeshifting. So if someone's projecting at me their human field, what this process of decoding is doing is decoding the human field. So they look human to me. And they look solid human. But when they shift their field into the non-human field, then I would start decoding that. And to my observation, they will have moved from a solid human state to a solid non-human state. But that's not what's happening, because there is no solidity. And we can see that with quantum physics. If you go deep enough into what we call matter, there's basically nothing there compared with what we perceive it to be. So you have this this dual world where you have the global cult in the secret society network, and you have the population. And the idea is, this is the whole foundation of it, in terms of control of information. You pass on through your secret society network at the inner core, not the Bill and Joe down the lodge. First of all, what the agenda is for humanity, going towards this obvious dystopia now. But you also pass on at that inner core, generation after generation after generation, the nature of reality and the illusory nature of physical reality. At the same time, this is how it's been done, that cult has created, never mind controls, has created the sources of information, education system, programming system, global media, whatever, that the population form its perceptions from. And the reason for all this now censorship is because they want to stop any other form of explanation of anything, especially reality, from reaching the public, because what they want is for them only to hear their version of what will get them to see the world in a way that allows mass human control. So what people like me have been doing all these years is uncovering what's in the cult and the cult plan, etc., and uncovering what they don't want us to know and passing it on to the public. But as I know from my own experience, it's easier now. With the 1990s and beyond, forget it. Is that the perception of reality of the mass of the people is so limited compared with what they know and are doing, that chasm is too great for most people to cross. So they go, "You're mad, mate. You know, this is ridiculous. This is far out. This could never happen." And you know, one of the greatest ways of human perceptual control is to control the perception of the possible. You can control and squeeze the perception of the possible. Then when this information is put before the public, they'll just say it's impossible. It's not impossible because your perception of the possible is your perception of the possible. It's not actually what is possible.
Right.
If you go into the levels that this cult is operating.
Right. So,
Right.
so what are your thoughts on the actual towers? So let's just say the frequencies or realities are merging. And there, you know, I don't know if you've heard of this new disease that's out, that if you start to see people appear as demons, let us know and we'll give you this medication, whatever.
Yeah.
And because I think people are starting to see through into the next frequency. And I think the towers are maintaining some sort of frequency net that keeps us from actually seeing what's going to start naturally presenting itself.
Yeah, absolutely right. Couldn't agree more. The astral or levels of the astral are starting to fuse into this human reality in a way well, you know, we don't know. In modern history, it's not happened. And so more and more people, and again, as more and more people awaken and expand their awareness, well, they're going to start seeing things that they couldn't see even through that expansion of their awareness. They're going to be able to perceive what they couldn't perceive before. So yeah, I think that that is definitely happening. And of course, there's every effort, and you've mentioned one of them, to stop people seeing what they're not supposed to see. But one of the things I go into in the new book, The Reveal, in some detail, is the next stage, which links into what you were just mentioning there about the veil. As I've traveled around the world, I've saw that the vast majority of humanity is not having a good time. It's trying to survive another day for so many people worldwide, in Africa, in Asia, in South America, in Central America, and so on. And increasingly in the West, it's becoming a more and more of a challenge to do that. And so by this time, I was convinced that reincarnation is real. But my reading of it is very different to the usual reincarnation story, which is you come here constantly, pass in different lives to learn lessons. I think that's garbage personally. I think it's actually a trap, and a trap that we can get out of, but only if we're aware that it's a trap and how it works. So one of the reasons I was convinced about reincarnation is just looking at, for instance, these very young children who have memories of past lives in detail. I mean, we're talking names, locations, even describing the internal layout of houses in places they've never been in this life. And there was a guy, I mentioned him in the reveal. He was an American-Canadian psychiatrist called Ian Stevenson.
Mm-hmm.
He became very well known for taking these stories, which very young children were describing, and going off. He did thousands of studies, thousands of them, and checking if they could be supported by the evidence. And he set out to debunk them. That was his idea, because he was a scientist who said, okay, if you want to prove something right, then what you've got to do is do everything you can to debunk it. And what he found was extraordinary detailed correlations between what these kids were describing and the locations that they were saying they had past lives in, the people they said they had past lives with, often who were still alive. And they checked out in extraordinary detail. And so many times, there's a story I tell in the reveal where one little boy, he was describing how he was married to this lady, and he was in this family, in this place where he'd never been before. And so they took him there. And he was talking to this lady, he said had been his wife. He's a little boy. He was talking to her as if he was still her husband, right? And must have been quite a scene. And what happened in the end is the family said to him, well, look, if what you're saying is true, we could never find her husband's will, or my husband's will. Where is it? And he goes along and he points to a floorboard. They took the floorboard up and there's the will. So, and there's been a lot of television programs about this too. But then I kind of related that to what I said a few minutes ago, that so many people in this world are having a really, really hard time. It's not fun. And I thought, well, I can understand how consciousness can be enticed and tricked into coming into this simulation once to produce what is become known as loosh, this low vibrational energy that people give off in certain emotional and mental states. But why the heck would you come back? I mean, you'd leave the body, wouldn't you? And you go, I ain't going back there. It's horrible. And for most people, it is. So why do they come back? And I started, I've done this over many years anyway, but I started to really intensely read and watch accounts of so-called near-death experiences and how they were describing the reality they experienced after the body had died, ceased. And what is death? The body ceases to decode the simulation because it's not functioning anymore. And then your consciousness is released and you find yourself in another reality. It's actually the astral. And the common themes they were describing were very, very compelling. And it became clear that, and when I started hearing the accounts of people, for instance, who say they can remember the incarnation process, which seems, a way to describe it, very technological, in a way that you wouldn't normally think, or the afterlife and the spiritual world, the spirit world and all this stuff. But actually, it's described in very technological terms. And one of the other things that I've started to see very clearly is that this whole simulation, the astral part of it and the human part of it, are both run by artificial intelligence. An artificial intelligence that is way, way beyond even what we're seeing in the public arena now. It's like a gigantic quantum computer, this simulation. And the AI that's now, you talk about, this astral dimension moving more and more into this one, and so people can see things. One of the things that I say is happening is that this AI explosion is coming in from the astral. It's a low-level version of it compared with that, but it's coming in from there. And it's coming in through the underground bases, and it's coming in through the secret projects. And what happens then is they have to produce cover stories to explain how this stuff came into the public arena. Because they can't say, well, it's in underground base, we put it out of there. They have cover stories, and they have cover people who become very rich being cover people. But they're just cover stories to explain how this came into the public arena, when actually didn't come into it like that at all. And so you'll note that the more this technological reality has unfolded, the gaps. I mean, I was born in 1952, and I've seen the gaps between technology being invented and coming into the public arena. You don't see the gaps anymore. It's an endless wave of more and more advanced technology, AI technology, computer technology, that's coming in and transforming this world into a dystopia, because the idea is that AI will control this world openly, not least control the human mind. They want to connect AI to the human brain. They're openly talking about this now, saying what a wonderful thing it would be and how we would be gods. Then you've got Elon Musk, who's doing the soft sell to the same end, who's saying, oh, well, AI is inevitable. It's going to take over. If we're not fused with AI, then, well, we'll die out.
Right.
In other words, the outcome is the same with both the soft cell and the hard cell, and that is that we're fused with AI. And AI will then dictate our thoughts and our emotional responses, and they won't have to manipulate information to manipulate perception anymore, because the perception will come direct. That's the idea. And people like Ray Kurzweil, the so-called futurist at Google, said years ago that by 2030, this will be happening. I say it's already happening. So I explain in the books. But so we are looking at an emerging control system through AI that's coming out of the astral. So these people that can remember the incarnation process, again, their common stories are very compelling. And one of them is just how dense energetically this human reality is. The way they describe it, coming into it, is one that is so dense. The frequency is so low compared with what they come in from, because the astral is a much more ethereal, from our perspective, reality, that it's almost impossible to experience. It's so dense. And the other thing that they talk about is coming in through a vast electromagnetic field, which has the effect of wiping their memory. And I recall you're probably too young to remember this, but when they started bringing in videotapes, these massive videotapes they had in those days, if you wanted to use one again, you couldn't just record over it, because you get bits of both on the screen. I've had it. You would rub it over a magnetic field, and it would wipe it. And then you could use it again. And it's an equivalent of that, really. And obviously, for the vast majority of people, we don't remember past lives. We don't remember being in another realm beyond this one. We only perceive this. And interestingly, what Ian Stevenson was talking about with his reincarnation research is that by the age of about 7, these kids, their memories started to fade. Mm-hmm. Some kept them into adulthood, but not many. And it's because this constant delivery of this reality through this decoding process, the biological computer, overrides it, and that memory fades. This is why it's young kids that really have this memory often. But yeah, they talk about it being wiped, and that makes sense to me, not only because we don't remember past lives overwhelmingly, although we have things like deja vu when we think I've been here before and what's going on, but it also explains something else. Um, when I've read these accounts of near-death experiences and when they've left the body's ceased to function, uh, they describe a reality that they say they'd never experienced before. They describe a bliss that they'd never experienced before, and that's a frequency to simulate actually the afterlife. Oh, you're in heaven now. Actually, it's another level of the simulation. And you think, well, you believe in reincarnation? I think, yeah. Well, why haven't you experienced it before then? You must have experienced it many times. So why do you think, okay, I've never experienced this before? It's amazing. It's because the mind wipe, as I call it in the reveal, continues after that death process until you're back in the astral fold, and you're caught back in the web, or what the Buddhists call the wheel of samsara, where you go on this wheel of constant reincarnation to, quote, learn lessons. Well, to evolve. Well, I just wonder what the kids in Gaza are learning currently. It's and you see these extraordinary lives that people have, and what tends to happen is, because of cognitive dissonance, people try to put a positive spin on what's happening. So I've heard people who, some from Silicon Valley and what have you, who are convinced this is a simulation, and I've researched it and come to that conclusion. It's more and more mainstream scientists are reaching that conclusion. But they still say, yeah, it's a simulation, but it's there so that we can experience things and evolve. It's this, it's getting past that and seeing actually it's trapped. Because if you're feeding off low vibrational human emotion, and because of the density of this human realm I've described, we are much more in a state to generate this energy.
Right.
And so you don't want people consciousness coming in here, leaving and going, sod that for a game of soldiers, I'm not going back there. You've got to have this sequence of another level of the simulation, which brings you back constantly, going through the human experience and generating this, quote, loosh. And this is what it is. And I've quoted people in the reveal who have memories of this experience of coming in to this reality through, quote, incarnation, and experience that they have had in this astral dimension, which they still remember, which talk about the fact it's a trap. It's a trap to keep you on the wheel of samsara. And for me, what I talk about in the book is there's three levels. That, you know, there's multiple levels as well, but there's three basic levels. One is the human form, the human body. The human body is a biological computer that's decoding the simulation field into this reality. And it's an interactive one. So it's affecting us, but we're also affecting it. So as people awaken and take a much more panoramic, expansive view of self and reality, they're impacting upon this field. And the field is also impacting on you, obviously. And more than anyone, it's impacting on those that are still stuck in the five senses, because they're in the simulation and of the simulation when they're in that state. So, but you know, the body is there to experience this human reality with this human frequency band. So if my consciousness wanted to tap these keys, it couldn't, because the frequency difference between my consciousness and this physical reality as we perceive it is so vast, and never the twain shall meet. I couldn't interact. I couldn't pick this cup up or anything. So we take on this outer shell to interact with the frequency band that we want to interact with, or at least that we've been tricked into interacting with. And then when you leave the body, you have another level, which is much more ethereal. Some people call it the soul. And the soul is that energetic shell that interacts with the astral. So you're in a much more ethereal reality, well, compared with this one, but you're still in a shell. You're still in a state of perceiving yourself in a form of individuality often. And then there's another level, which I call spirit, which is the true I ultimately. And that operates outside of the simulation. It's beyond what we call the soul. It's beyond, obviously, the human body. And it's a state of being and a state of self-identity in which you are simply pure awareness. You are a state of being aware. No form, none of it. You're just a state of awareness. And what happens is the state of awareness comes into the astral, or is enticed into it. And then it takes on the astral perception of reality, and starts to lose contact with that level of it that I call spirit. And then it comes into the human world, and it loses it even more because it's so far away. This density is so far away from the level of frequency and beyond frequency that the spirit operates at. So what this whole conspiracy is about is focusing attention in the human experience in the five senses, so that we are perceiving the world from a five sense point of view, and that we are self-identifying our sense of the I with the labels of a human life. I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm a this race, this religion, this sexuality, that's who I am. No, that's what you're experiencing. And what the whole foundation of this conspiracy is about is convincing us that what we're experiencing is who we are. And when you go to the level of the soul, the astral body, if you like, then the same thing basically continues. Because if you look at religion is basically founded on having a soul. But this conspiracy ain't bothered about that, because you're still in the matrix, you're still in the simulation at that level as well. What they don't want us to understand is that we are beyond that. We are simply a state of awareness, and potentially all awareness, what people call God. It's my feeling that a lot of people who worship what they perceive to be God, it is not God at all as they think it is. It's actually these entities, this right. Conspiracy. Because if you look at the Bible, no one's going to convince me that what's being described in the Old Testament and what's being described in the New Testament is the same entity. It's the same being. I mean, please. The Old Testament God is that old bloodthirsty bloke who's jealous God and all this stuff. And
psychopath.
Yeah, a psychopath, exactly. Mm-hmm. Yahweh, Jehovah, and the Elohim and all this stuff. They're psychopaths. And for me, as I say in some of my books, this Genesis description of God creating the world I say that's actually this non-human force, which in the end is a state of consciousness, which is like if you look at the different religions and you look at the different cultures and belief systems, there's an extraordinary common theme. Like Christianity talks about the devil or Satan. That for me is the consciousness that's driving this, And they talk about demons. These are the entities that are driven by that consciousness and are expressions of that consciousness. You look at Islam and they talk about shaitan or iblis. That for me is the consciousness, the negative consciousness, the psychopathic consciousness. And they talk about the jinn, which are the equivalent of the demons. Not all of them, but it's very similar. Then you've got the Gnostics, and they talk about a being they call Yaldabaoth, or the demiurge. Yaldabaoth is that consciousness, and they talk about archons working for the consciousness, Yaldabaoth. Archons in Greek means rulers, actually hidden rulers. And you then talk, as I have, to people in various native cultures around the world, whether they're Aborigines in Australia or the Zulus, etc., in South Africa. And they have a similar concept of this manipulative consciousness and these entities working for that consciousness, of being driven by that consciousness, that actually are manipulating human society. So we are faced with a situation where the key for me of sorting this out is not Trump the savior or anybody else the savior. It's realizing the nature of the trap, how it's based on perception and holding perception, which means controlling frequency. The more expansive you perceive yourself to be, like if you perceive yourself, the I, to be this, and many people do, then you are absolutely self-identifying with limitation, with myopia. And thus your frequency will reflect that, what you're giving off, what you're operating on.
Right.
If you go into the astral and you perceive yourself to be a reincarnating to learn lessons entity, and I explain in the reveal how the manipulation goes on in the astral. It's been described to me by many people, and how they get them to come back into the human world. But your perception of self will reflect that astral identity, and you will operate on that frequency. And both of those frequencies are operating within the simulation frequency, so you're in the trap. Once you reach this point of awareness, this self-identity, that we are awareness, a state of being aware, that generates the frequency that you are operating on, that whips you out of this thing, out of this simulation, out of this trap. It's all self-identity, and which generates frequency. And that's why within this simulation and within this human world, they're constantly working to control your perception, especially your self-identity, so that you continue to operate within the frequency trap of the simulation. So basically, we're given two choices overwhelmingly. One is that, and this is overwhelmingly promoted by what we call science, what a joke, that we are a cosmic accident and we've come from nowhere and we're going to nowhere, and that's it, lights go out. And the other is that we are subjected to the whims, the control, and the diktats of a God And at that level, when we leave the body, we become the soul, and we're judged often in the major religions, not Hinduism, but others. We are judged on our one life on earth of where we're going to go eternally, which for me is absolute nonsense. But the thing is, those two choices, I am the body and that's it, I am the soul, are both simulation trap phenomena. And we need to go beyond that. And they don't want us to go beyond that. And if you look at how religions have worked over the years, how Roman Catholicism has worked over the years, the Church of Rome, interestingly, so many people in this hijacked alternative media are converting to Roman Catholicism with its history of mass slaughter for the crime of having a different opinion. But if you look at these religions, through history, if you deviate from their story, from their narrative, then you're a blasphemer. Mm-hmm. And through the ages, that's been a death sentence. And so anyone that's moving into this perception of reality and perception of self-identity, which is threatening to take them out of here, these religions jump on them and tell them that they can't do that, or you have the Inquisition and all the other stuff for the crime of not believing the official story. So all these things have served the interests of this simulation and its controlling force, because control perception, you control frequency. Keep the frequency within the simulation, gotcha.
Right. And I've heard Max Spears used to refer to the infinity symbol as being a metaphor for the trap, and it originated from the snake eating its own head, right? And that was like
the Ouroboros, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, and obviously that can be perceived and viewed in many ways, and there's a lot of opinions on that. Also, what's interesting about, well, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll tell you what's interesting is there's the Ouroboros, which is the snake eating its own, swallowing its own tail. But there's another old esoteric concept of what's called the ring past knot. And the ring past knot is said to be a point of frequency within which you will be trapped unless you reach a certain level of enlightenment. Now, you look at what the Buddhists say, and there's truth and there's fantasy in all things. So there's some really good stuff in Christianity. There's some really good stuff in Buddhism. It's taking it all without question that I say is the problem. Once you think something's the word of God, then none of it can be wrong. Right. But it is. There's really good stuff, and there's stuff that cannot be supported by not just the evidence, but by sanity in it often. So you have this Buddhist concept that you keep incarnating until you've evolved to a state of enlightenment. And when you reach that state, you can leave the wheel of samsara, brackets, the frickin' matrix. And so what the two are saying is that you have to reach a certain state of enlightenment to get through the ring past knot, or to leave the wheel of samsara. And that state of enlightenment is a state of being aware that you are pure consciousness. You are a state of being aware which generates you to operate on a frequency that can leave the place, that can get through the ring pass knot. In fact, you're in a state of frequency awareness that the ring pass knot no longer exists. It's like passing through another radio station. The other radio station doesn't exist because you're on a different wavelength. And it's the same with the ring pass knot. It's the same with what the Buddhists call a state of enlightenment. It's all about reaching this self-identity. And the foundation of the conspiracy is to stop you reaching that state of self-identity that will get you out of here.
Right. And, you know, it's depicted in Star Trek and Stargate SG-1. There's a program called Genesis, right, where they terraform a planet in 7 days or whatever and make it habitable for humans. But and they literally they show it as you know, being implemented on a planet by normal beings, but the people who spawn from that creation think that it was, you know, done by a god. And they tell us in the shows and movies. And we're at the hour now, and we could start wrapping this up. And I did want to get your thoughts on CERN and what CERN is actually doing and what role it's playing in trying to open up gateways and stuff, if you have time for that. And then we can
I do think that's exactly what CERN's doing. They are manipulating the energetic field to open up these interdimensional gateways. Yeah, I'm sure they're doing that. And CERN is when you look at it, the amount of money that's been pumped into that, the amount of countries and scientists that are pumped into that, it's just extraordinary. And I talk to people who worked at CERN, and what happens with a lot of them, it seems to be most of them, is they're only there for a short time. They use their expertise, but they're only there for a short time, relatively. And that means they're not there long enough to get the big picture. They're here today, gone tomorrow, come and go, come and go. But the people who are running that at the core, the usual story, they will know exactly what they're doing and why. And this thing about the Higgs particle and all that stuff, I'd say these are cover stories for what they're really doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that. Absolutely. And, you know, there's lots of conspiracy theories surrounding that, but some of them I think are true. Like people are coming to the same conclusion. We're opening portals here and allowing entities in from other dimensions to add to the control system. So
even to the location where CERN is at, Geneva, Switzerland, there's a reason they chose that location.
Oh, yes. I mean, why are so many global institutions with global control, based in that area, and that's right. Switzerland, etc. And I don't know whether you've seen the clip of a lady called Stuckelberger. She's a scientist who worked for the World Health Organization. She's been involved in a lot of these things, and she lives in that area. And she's done some interviews a little while back now, but you can still see them on the internet, where she's describing meeting CERN scientists at dinners and what have you, who describe to her how they are bringing entities into this reality from other dimensions. That's what they're actually doing. And, you know, again, if we go back to what I said about basically the two worlds, which are divided by knowledge, where you have the cult world passing on this advanced knowledge through the cult, and the human world where the cult institutions make sure that the mass of the public remain ignorant of what they know, then that's what you're looking at CERN, for instance. You're dealing with technologies and agendas that are so far out to the perception of the mass of the population, the control of the sense of the possible, that they'll just dismiss and laugh at a lot of this stuff. But it's actually actually happening.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree more.
Absolutely.
Oh, well, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been fabulous. I mean,
Yes.
to be able to summarize the big picture in the way that you do is impressive, and I could listen to you talk all day. And thank you for what you're doing. Obviously, none of it goes unnoticed. And if you'd like to let our audience know, where they can find your book and about Iconic Media, I follow you guys on social media, and I think it's great what you and Garrett are doing. So maybe you can talk about that, and we can wrap it up.
Yeah. Well, davidicke.com is my website, where there's news articles every day that put the events in perspective rather than what we're told they mean. And all my videos are on there, and you can get the reveal there. The reveal is part of a trilogy, but all the books are individual in the sense of they're self-contained. Called The Trap, The Dream, and now The Reveal. And The Reveal's as deep as I've gone so far in the rabbit hole. And Iconic was started by my son Jamie in 2019, just before COVID hit, funny enough, the COVID hoax hit. It's kind of an alternative Netflix in a real kind of theme. In the sense that it does news shows. I do one every week called The Dot Connector, and Gareth, my other son, does a show every week. And we also do, this is a major part of Iconic, we do full-length documentaries about reality, nature of reality. I've done one called Albion, and I've done ones that are kind of along the themes that we've been talking about. And we've just got a 4-part series. 3 parts are now streaming on iconic.com, one to come very shortly, called The Great Unknown. And that is exploring this whole reality of what we've been talking about. And the third one, which has literally just come out, it's produced by our director and producer Christiana Van Wyk, is about the trap and how it works. In which we talk to people. I mean, I take part in them as well, but we're talking to people there that that say that they've seen the trap and that they have memories of their incarnation process and memories of the electromagnetic field that they go through to wipe their memories and what have you. What in theory it didn't with them, but it does with most people. And so it's a real cutting edge platform, Iconic. And what we're seeking to do is what I talked about earlier, which is constantly to ask the question, what don't we know? And then go in pursuit of what we don't know. So it's real cutting edge stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. It's great.
Fantastic.
The production quality is fantastic and the content quality, information is fantastic. So I encourage everyone to go check that out. And thanks again. We can't thank you enough for joining us. And this has been an absolute pleasure. And thank you to the listeners who have been here with us. We love you all, and we can't do this without you. And until next time, have a great evening or day, depending on where you're at.
Thanks, mate. Bye.
Bye.
It was further agreed that the alien nation and the United States would exchange 16 personnel each to the other with the purpose of learning each of the other. The alien guests would remain on Earth, and the human guests would travel to the alien point of origin for a specified period of time, then return.
Well, what shocked me was how they selected the astronauts. But they went out and found people within the military that were orphans and didn't have any family members and weren't married. Now, that's a difficult task, even in 1960.
But this became quite a mainstay in early ufology of the 1990s, given that in addition to Request Anonymous telling this extraordinary story, there were several alleged DIA or Defense Intelligence Agency officials who were also coming in and saying, yeah, we have knowledge of this case too, and we can verify what Request Anonymous is talking about.
Could you estimate what his level of intellect was?
Smarter than me. Smarter than me by a long range.